Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? Hi, Angelica. Good to see you. Hey, Chris. Hey, Crystal. So before we get started, I have a little surprise for everybody. Come here. Come here. Meet the newest member to the family, little Douglas Quinn, the golden doodle. My wife, she drove up and back to Vermont on Saturday to pick him up. And he joins his brother, who's another golden doodle from the same breeder, who is 3 years old, and he's about 8 weeks old. So if you hear me yelp a little bit, it's because the dog's chewing on my toes. How's everybody doing? Good? Yeah? How was your weekend? Everything good? He is adorable. He's extremely adorable, except when he's peeing and pooping in the house, as all puppies do. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for everybody's emails last week. Very much appreciated. It's one of the reasons why I love teaching at Loyola. In addition to just being a great university from an academic standpoint, it's also a really good family community. So I very much appreciate everybody's emails and well wishes and prayers and condolences. So thank you. So tonight we're going to do a reboot of what we were going to talk about last week as it relates to consumer credit and your credit score, why it's important, how it impacts your ability to secure lower interest rate loans for the items that you might wish to purchase in the future, from cars to homes to furniture, okay? Things that are going to be most relevant to you the moment you leave Loyola. But before we get into the slide deck, I'd like to talk a little bit about the midterm for next week, okay? So that you have a good idea as to what the midterm looks like and how best to go about preparing for the midterm, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I've already written the midterm, all right? So what I'm going to show you is the actual midterm, okay? But the numbers are going to change when we get to next Tuesday, okay? And once we go through the midterm, I'll talk a little bit about how the midterm is going to work, what you need to submit, how long you have for the midterm, okay? And the mechanism with which you will submit the midterm. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Ow, God. Sorry, see, I told you. Okay, so the midterm is in case study format, all right? And I will give bonus points for right now if anyone can tell me who Albert Awol is, okay? It's a fictitious character, but it's actually a character that is related to something that involves Disney, okay? So if anybody can tell me who Albert Awol is in the next 60 seconds, you get an extra 1 point on your midterm. All right, so it's a case study, all right, which means that it's in written form, and we're going to be walking through this individual, Albert Awol, all right, and he's got some aspirations and he's got some things going on in his life, all right. He's asking you as his financial advisor, okay, to help him organize some of his life. He doesn't really know what his balance sheet and his cash flow statement look like. So he's going to provide you, okay, with a bunch of information, all right? And it's completely unorganized. There's some balance sheet information mixed in with income statement information, and he needs you to help him organize his life. So you're going to need to take the information that you're provided, and you're going to need to sort it out into a balance sheet, okay? What are his assets? What are his liabilities? And then based upon what you calculate, you need to calculate his net worth. So remember that net worth is assets minus liabilities. Okay. And as best you can, please organize your assets in terms of liquidity. So most liquid assets being in the number 1 spot and the least liquid assets being in the number 7 spot. All right. Same thing with liabilities. Anything that he has due within the next 12 months is considered a current liability. Okay, so order your liabilities in order of most liabilities that are due closest in time. All right, so you have total assets, total liabilities, and net worth is assets minus liabilities. Okay, so then based upon all the information that you're given, you're also going to identify what goes into your cash flow statement, okay? Your wages, all right? How much is he getting paid? What kind of deductions does he have? What are his net wages? You'll be able to identify what his fixed expenses are and what his variable expenses are for the total expenses. And then disposable income, as you know, is nothing more than net wages minus the total expenses to get down to disposable income. Okay, so at that point, you will have taken all of Albert's unorganized data and you'll have parsed it into the 2 financial statements that we've talked about this semester. Okay, so since the 60 seconds is up, I will just go ahead and tell you. He actually is, if you've ever seen the movie The Jungle Cruise from Walt Disney, he's actually the captain of the Jungle Cruise. Okay, so I like to throw a little bit of fun into these types of exams. Right, so you're going to build the balance sheet, you're going to calculate net worth, you're going to build the cash flow statement, okay, wages minus deductions, net wages, fixed expenses, variable expenses, total expenses, and then finally calculating disposable income. Okay. Once we've built the financial statements, there's a few ratios, okay, that we've talked about that are really important to understand. Tonight, we're going to get into debt payments ratio, okay, and debt ratio, because that deals with consumer credit. We've talked about liquidity ratio, housing ratio, and entertainment ratio, all of which are in the text, okay? So in terms of the midterm, you've got access to your text, got access to the lecture slides, you've got access to your notes, you've got access to the internet, you've got access to your calculators and to Excel. The only thing you don't have access to is your other classmates. That's it. Okay, so you can use everything at your disposal to complete this exam, right? So once you get through these ratio calculations, we get into some time value of money calculations, right? So Albert's got a goal to start his own business, right? So you're going to have to figure out what Albert needs to deposit today. So lump sum today in order to achieve some future goal that he's got. Okay, so we're talking about a present value calculation, right? And then based upon the liquidity that you calculated prior, you're going to have to answer the question, does he have enough current liquidity to accomplish the goal that he wants to accomplish based upon your answer to number 6? Okay, and then if he does, And if you remove the amount that you calculated from number 6, the lump sum that he needs to put down today, what is his new liquidity ratio, right? Based upon your answer to number 7, right? So the first series, 6, 7, and 8, deal with lump sum payments. If Albert wants to make a lump sum deposit today in order to achieve some future goal of savings in the future, okay, that's what 6, 7, and 8 relate to. Then question 9 says, well, maybe Albert doesn't want to make a lump sum deposit, okay? He wants to pay monthly towards his goal, okay? So question number 9 says, what's his monthly payment that he would need to deposit every month in order to achieve his goal, right? And that gets back to the equals PMT function within Excel, okay? So he's going to be depositing a certain amount of money every month, and he's got a certain amount that he will be willing to deposit today in addition to those future monthly payments. So that'll be the equals PMT function within Excel. And remember, we'll go through this here in a few minutes. We'll go through a couple of examples to show you how those work within Excel based upon the numbers that are here, okay? And then based upon your answers to 6, 7, and 8 and to question 9, then question 10 is more subjective. Which option do you recommend and why? Okay, either option could be fine. You know, he could deposit the lump sum. He could make the monthly payments. I want you to assess the lump sum analysis and the payment analysis based upon what you calculated as his disposable income to see if it's feasible for him to make those monthly payments. Okay, so there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer to question number 10. It's your response to what you feel Albert should do and why. Okay, and this is real life, because in many cases, sometimes we have the option to take money out of our savings account and go ahead and lump sum a deposit for a future investment, okay? But sometimes it's better if we pay monthly towards that goal, right? Either one can be correct. Both can be correct, right? But I want you to justify why you picked one versus the other, okay? Now, once you've done that, we've moved on from time value of money, and now we're into 1040 tax calculations, right? So you're going to be given some information around his financial situation, right? What are his W-2 wages, okay? And pay attention to the words, okay? Verbiage is important. Monthly, okay? Ordinary dividends per month. 401k contributions monthly, okay? So when we get to the 1040 forms, you're going to have to fill them out. But remember that the 1040 is an annual form. So you're going to need to convert the monthly numbers into annual numbers for the midterm, okay? He's got health savings. He tells you what his tax filing is, okay? He's contributing to his 401k. So we know we're going to have, in addition to the 1040, we know we're going to have some Schedule 1 items, okay? So once you've taken a peek at what his financial situation looks like, there's a series of questions that relates to completing the 1040 and the Schedule 1, okay? And then once we get through the basic calculations within the 1040, we move into the marginal tax calculations, just like you guys have already done. You'll be given the marginal tax brackets with the single filing, and you need to determine which marginal tax bracket Albert finds himself within. And then you need to answer some questions related to the taxes that he owes based upon the marginal tax brackets and the taxes that he paid during the year. So it gives you what he's paid you are going to calculate what he owes, okay? And then you're going to have to tell me, does he get a refund or does he owe money to the government? Okay, that'll be question 21. Okay. What we're going to discuss tonight relates to questions 22 and 23. Okay, how much interest does Albert have to pay on his credit cards, okay, if he makes a payment currently, okay? And then how many months is it going to take him to pay off his credit card if he makes a minimum payment amount per month? Okay, so again, we're back into Excel. So remember, time value of money. We had equals present value equals PV, equals future value equals FV, equals payment equals PMT, and then equals NPER, the number of periods. Okay, so we're going to be getting into that as part of the midterm tonight. And then finally, as promised, the last question is to develop one SMART goal for Albert. Okay, and what I mean by that is literally lay it out. Give me the specific goal. Give me the measurable component. Give me the achievable. Give me the reasonable. Give me the time-based. Literally use the acronym to describe what the one, just pick one. And you'll figure it out as you go through it. What is a SMART goal for Albert? Okay. Each one of those 5 different components to the SMART goal. All right. And that's it. Okay. So I give you some hints on the formulas for what you can use within Excel, for what you're going to need Excel for tonight or for the midterm next week. Okay. And then finally, you'll have an answer key, right? So what you're going to submit to me, and this will all be given to you in a Word document, right? All of the tables from questions 1 and questions 2, you'll be able to input all of your data right into the Word document, okay? So for question related to the balance sheet and the cash flow statement, you'll be able to input everything into Excel, okay, or into the Word document. And then for the questions 1 through question 24, okay, you'll enter your answers on the answer key, also a table that you can type in. And your deliverable back to me is the Word document that you have created. Okay, so everything will be in one place for you to complete. Okay, and your deliverable back to me on the midterm is this entire document with the balance sheet, the cash flow statement, and the answer key filled out. Okay. Any questions about the midterm next week?
I had a question.
Chris, are we coming on Zoom to do the exam? Well, my answer to this is what is going to earn me bonus points on my course evaluation for this semester. No, you don't have to be on Zoom for the exam. You're going to have the entire day to complete the exam. Okay, so I'm going to open up the midterm exam at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, right? And you will have until 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning to finish it. Okay, so you'll have an entire day to finish the exam. All right. I feel that's pretty fair. Okay. Jade had a question. Do you want a 1040 in the Schedule 1 form as well? I don't. All right. Obviously, if you don't complete the 1040 in the Schedule 1 properly, your answers to those specific questions are going to be wrong. And we'll deal with that after the midterm. So the only thing that you guys have to submit is this Word document back to me. Okay. If I have questions about your responses, all right, then you'll be able to submit those at a later date. All right. Andrew had a question. Are we meeting Tuesday as well? Nope, we are not meeting on Tuesday. You have the entirety of the day to complete the midterm. All right. I will be available all day, right, to answer questions that you might have about the midterm. Okay, so if you do have questions, reach out. I'll be happy to hop on Zoom, one-on-one to answer questions that you might have. All right, so if you get stuck on something, do reach out. Okay, but you'll have from 9 a.m. on Tuesday until 9 a.m. on Wednesday to complete the midterm exam. Okay, the 1040 form and the Schedule 1 form are obviously out there already on Moodle for you. So you can download those again to use within your analysis for the midterm. Okay, but you'll have an entire day to complete it. Right? Any other questions? No? Okay. All right. All right, so tonight, let's get into consumer credit. All right, this is one of my more favorite lectures to talk about because it has so many different implications in your life in terms of saving yourself money, right? There is literally no point in paying a higher interest rate for a loan or for consumer credit simply because you haven't managed your finances properly. All right. So managing your credit and managing your finances allows you to obtain a lower interest rate for the credit that you're looking to obtain, which in the case of a home mortgage, which might be a 30-year term, you're talking about tens upon tens of thousands of dollars of savings that flows directly into your pocket simply because you've done a great job managing your finances and keeping your credit score as high as possible, right? And we'll talk about what goes into your credit score tonight and how you can efficiently and appropriately improve your credit score, right, over time. And for those of you that currently do not have a credit card, we're going to go to nerdwallet.com and we're going to do some research to see what's out there, okay? Because there is a credit card that's going to fit pretty much everybody's needs and everybody's wants, right? As far as you guys being a student right now, there are some advantages to certain cards, okay, that are better for you currently than maybe 10, 15 years down the road. But we'll get to that later in the lecture this evening, okay? So does anybody, so any other questions around the midterm? Okay. By the way, all of this has been recorded so far, so you'll have access to what we just talked about if you want to go back and review what's going to be on the midterm. But again, what you just saw here on the midterm, okay, is exactly what it's going to be. I mean, literally exactly what it's going to be, with the exception of some numbers moving around. So if you want to study for the midterm and you want to go ahead and set your Excel file up, you can use this file, this data that you see here, okay, to create an Excel file that allows you to finish the midterm as efficiently as possible. Okay, let's go ahead and get into consumer credit for tonight. Let me find my PowerPoint here. All right. So we've got a few learning objectives for tonight. Okay, there's 6 of them, but we're not going to go the full 3 hours. That's one thing I hate about this whole virtual learning thing. I don't know if you guys experience the same thing, but I don't know. Like, and you can give me some feedback if you'd like after the end of class. Send me an email. But I'm struggling with this throughout this semester, not only with our class, but with the graduate class that I'm teaching in corporate finance for the MBA students within the Selinger School. And I just don't feel like I'm giving you enough that you would be getting if we were in the classroom together. Okay, it's really difficult to get the engagement going. It's hard to use the chat room, and I probably haven't done a very good job of using the polling option within Zoom. But I just kind of feel like I haven't been giving you the best possible experience that you could have as far as it relates to this particular course that we would have gotten if we would have been in the classroom together. So if you would, and you're comfortable, feel free to shoot me an email with, what you feel has been working well, what you feel might want to improve after the midterm. If you've got other professors that are doing things that you feel are innovative, feel free to just send that to me. Like, I don't take offense to any of that stuff. Constructive criticism is always welcomed, even, in the professor to student relationship that we have. Okay, so feel free to voice your opinions, and I will certainly make adjustments to the course, once we get through the midterm. All right. So tonight we've got 6 learning objectives. We're going to talk about what consumer credit is, what it means, right? And what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this massive system of credit that we have. Because make no mistake about it, companies like American Express and Visa and MasterCard would not exist without the credit business. Okay, they make money on our willingness to put charges on our credit cards. Anybody have an idea what today was as it relates to Amazon? Today was the start of something for Amazon.
Prime Day?
Prime Day. Yes, Prime Day. I ordered a bunch of shit at like 5 o'clock this morning because it just came on and it was like only lasted for like 5 minutes, right? But it's a big deal. And not only that, but I have an Amazon Prime Visa card, which gives me an extra 5% off. Okay, so you can utilize credit to your advantage as long as you're smart about it. Okay, and it's estimated that in the next 2 days, today and tomorrow for Prime Day, Amazon is going to bring in $10 billion of revenue. 10 billion in 2 days, just because of Prime Day. That is an astronomical number, okay? And many of the people who are purchasing the products off of Amazon are utilizing their credit to make those purchases, okay? If you haven't started shopping for Christmas yet, you need to start shopping for Christmas right now, because with everything that's going on as it relates to coronavirus, and we're still in like this partial lockdown mode and people not wanting to go outside or be indoors at a mall, okay? The vast majority of the Christmas shoppers, the holiday shoppers, are going to be doing their shopping online. So the supply of the products is going to go down. And if the supply of products goes down and you're looking to buy some of those products, go back to your economics class. If supply goes down and demand is still high, what happens to the price? It goes up, right? So if you're thinking about Christmas, I know we haven't even gotten to Halloween yet, and I'm usually the guy that says, why on God's earth, okay, do I have my pumpkin spice latte at Starbucks showing up in the middle of September when it's not even the fall yet? But this is one of those moments where you might want to start planning ahead a little bit and utilizing your credit to make some of those purchases ahead of everybody else, right? So we're going to define consumer credit, what some of the advantages and disadvantages are. We're going to talk about what the different types of credit exist, closed end versus open end. We're going to look at what your credit capacity is, okay, and how that translates into your FICO credit score. And I'm literally going to log on to one of my credit card accounts, right? And I'm going to show you how you can do it on your side to get your credit score. And so you can see what the components are that go into your credit score, right? So I'm going to be fully transparent with you about what my credit score is, right? So you can see what it looks like. Okay. We're going to talk about the objective 4, which is what are some of the pieces of information that creditors look for when you apply for credit, okay? The 5 C's of credit. Right? And then the last 2 objectives we'll kind of move through relatively quickly, but there are certain things that, certain steps, certain actions that you can take as a consumer okay, that if you are denied credit, okay, that you can take in order to remove negative information from your credit reports, to correct mistakes that might be on your credit reports. And guess what? There are mistakes that happen. Okay. So it is important that you check this, right? It's not something that you just, that exists out there and you never look at it. You need to look at it. All right. At a minimum, once a year, you need to be checking what components are within your credit score. And then finally, there are laws enacted by Congress, okay, that can protect you in the event you've got a complaint about your consumer credit. Speaking of Congress, anybody watch any of the ACB Senate confirmation hearings in the Senate yesterday and today? Yeah, Chris, what'd you think, Chris?
I mean, it was the first time I ever saw something like that, so it's pretty interesting just to watch it. I mean,
I think you're on mute, bud.
what'd you say?
Oh, or I just can't hear you.
Can you hear me right now?
There we go. I can hear you now.
Oh, I was just saying
Verizon
that was the
commercial
first
now.
time I ever saw like a Senate hearing, so like it was pretty interesting just to see like the questions being asked and like stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care what your politics are. All right. I love the Constitution. Right. And the Senate hearings for, whether you watched the Brett Kavanaugh hearings a few years back, or you're watching it now for Comey Barrett, like you're going to learn a lot. Like there is a lot of really cool stuff that relates to the Constitution that they start talking about within these hearings. Okay. And we can take one position or the other position based on, political views. That's fine. I have no problems with any of that. But seeing how the system works, that is really amazing. Okay. And I would encourage all of you to spend, because it can get pretty boring and pretty nasty at times. All right. But I want to encourage each one of you to go out and watch some of this every day. I mean, Fox News has got it covered pretty much all the time. Your local news, like here in Baltimore, we've got WBAL 1090. Oh, speaking of that, anybody see what happened in Baltimore today with the state's attorney? Marilyn Mosby? Anybody? Nothing? The IRS is fining her millions of dollars for not paying taxes for the last 3 years. So here we are again talking about real world stuff, okay? Not filing your taxes, not understanding or intentionally misleading. Remember we talked about tax avoidance versus tax evasion, okay? There's a difference between the two of those, right? Yeah, Marilyn Mosby and her husband, Nick Mosby, have been fined like a couple $1 million by the IRS for not reporting all of their travel money that they received from donors over the last 3 years. Okay. So we've got 6 learning objectives for tonight. All right. And again, like I said, at the beginning of the semester, I apologize. Sometimes I do take tangents to talk a little bit about things that are going on in the real world. Okay. But nonetheless, consumer credit tonight. All right. So learning objective 1, let's talk about what consumer credit is. And let's discuss a little bit about what some of the advantages and disadvantages are of obtaining consumer credit, right? So at its purest form, okay, credit is defined as nothing more than an arrangement to receive either cash, goods, or services today with the promise that you are going to pay for those in the future, okay? Somebody, based upon your credit score, finds you capable of paying your bills and is willing to issue you a line of credit. And you may use that line of credit for pretty much whatever you'd like. You want to take out a cash advance for $500? You can do that. You want to buy a new TV at Best Buy to watch, the Super Bowl in February? You can do that. All right, which will be interesting to see what happens with that. You want to buy a new bedroom set or a new living room set from a furniture store to furnish your new place after you graduate? You can do that on credit, right? but you have to have first established an ability to pay, which is why having a credit card is important, right? And managing that credit card responsibly is even more important. You know, paying for things with cash is great. Don't get me wrong. If you've got the money set aside and you've budgeted properly, just like we've talked about in this class, and you want to pay for things with your debit card, or you want to write a check, or you want to pay for things with cash, that's great, okay? But that does nothing to establish your ability to pay from a credit standpoint, okay? So you've got to kind of do both. You have to be able to show creditors, right, that you have the ability and the responsibility and the discipline to pay your bills, right? And that's where your credit score comes in. So credit is nothing more than an arrangement that you have with a credit issuing institution where they give you the ability to either receive cash, goods, or services by placing it on your credit card. And your commitment to them is that you are going to repay them at some future point in time. And when we say repay them, we mean hopefully repay everything that you initially put on the credit card, but you are going to pay them interest based upon your credit score. Okay? And they're going to give you this, they're going to dangle this carrot out in front of you, this minimum monthly payment. As long as you pay us this minimum amount, right, we're not going to report you to the credit rating agencies, right? But as you've already learned from the time value of money conversation that we've had, interest on credit cards, okay, compounds monthly at sometimes very high interest rates, 19.99%, 23.99%, 14.99%, right? And we're going to talk about that later on tonight. Okay. So at its purest form, credit is just simply an arrangement between a debtor and a creditor. Right? Consumer credit, right, is the use of credit for our personal needs, right, excluding the mortgage, right, because in general, the mortgage payment that we might have on a home is the single largest expense that we might have. It's also the longest term debt that we might owe. So in terms of consumer credit, we exclude home mortgages from the conversation, right? That gets dealt with in through a different lens, right? So consumer credit, right, is the use of credit for our personal needs, for ourselves or for our families, right? Your Netflix subscription, right? Your Hulu subscription, right? That gets billed to your credit card or automatically deducted from your checking account. Okay, I would encourage you to put as much of those things on your credit card as possible because you have to pay for them anyway, right? So if you're paying for Netflix or Hulu or your Amazon Prime membership directly out of your checking account, you're paying for it anyway. So you might as well manage your cash more efficiently and get an extra 30 days of interest on the money in your checking account and use your credit card to cover those bills, okay? And then just pay it off 30 days later. So you're getting 30 more days of use of cash, okay? It's more efficient cash flow utilization. So when we think about the financing alternatives and some of the trade-offs that go along with financing, all right, there's three ways that we as consumers finance our purchases. We either use our savings to pay for those purchases. We either use our current monthly income, okay, whatever we had coming in the door minus all of our other expenses. So we use some of that disposable income to pay for the products that we want to purchase. Or thirdly, we borrow against our expected future income, right? That is what consumer credit is. When we put money on a credit card, or we take out a car loan, or we take out a home mortgage, we are in effect borrowing against our future income, right? Because at some point, The income that we've got coming in down the future, down the line in the future, right, is going to be used to continue paying off those loans, right? So either we take it out of what we've already saved, we take it out of our monthly operating income, or we're borrowing from future income by putting it on credit. Okay, those are the only three ways that we as consumers finance the purchases that we make, right? And guess what? Just like we talked about at the beginning of the semester with opportunity costs, there are trade-offs for each one of those, okay? If we draw down our savings, okay, we are taking away from our emergency fund, okay? We're essentially adding risk into our life. Okay, we're taking away from that cushion that we worked hard to build. So we're depleting our savings, and that de facto reduces the emergency funds that we have on hand to cover those unexpected things that come up. All right. When we spend our current income on luxury items or other things that we want to have today, and we're taking those funds out of our operating income, okay, whatever we're choosing to spend that money on, okay, those funds could have been invested and could have grown to a point where it improves our future well-being, okay? So the opportunity cost there is future value of the growth of the money that we used to purchase the goods and services that we needed in that moment of time. And then finally, when we spend future income now, it reduces the funds that are available to us for future expenses. Okay. When we put consumer products on credit cards and we build debt, that debt is eventually due at some point, right? It eventually comes due. You cannot avoid it. And when we do that, and we're being charged interest, and that interest compounds upon itself, our balance begins to grow, and it erodes our future buying power. Okay? So when we spend future income today, right, it reduces the funds that we have available to us in the future for expenses that may come up. Right? So when we talk about uses and misuses of credit, credit's not bad. Credit's great. All right. Having credit is a good thing. All right. It provides a cushion. It provides a safety net. All right. If we haven't built up our emergency fund to where we want it to be equivalent to 3 months of our total expenses, right, we have a backstop in the form of credit. Right? But we've got to ask ourselves some questions before we start utilizing that credit that has been given to us by the issuing companies, right? So before we use credit for major purchases, we've got to consider some things and ask ourselves some questions. First, do I have the cash for the down payment? Would it be better to go ahead and take the cash out of my liquidity, all right, and make this payment with my cash instead of putting it on credit? Do I really want to use my savings for this particular purchase? Do I really want this 85-inch, Samsung OLED TV? Yes, I do want it, but do I really want to use my emergency fund that's really there for emergencies for that purchase? Only up to you to answer. Is this purchase within my budget? Okay. You guys have a budget template. It's provided for you. I built it, right? You have no excuse other than you don't want to use it. Okay. So please use it, develop your budget. And then when you're looking at making a purchase, ask yourself that question, right? Does this purchase fit my budget? And you know what? We are all guilty of buying things that are beyond our current budget. All right. So nobody's perfect. All right. I am equally as guilty as each person on our class tonight in binge buying, splurge buying certain products. No doubt about it. Okay. Can I use my credit in a better way? Right? Can I use my credit to maybe purchase something that might have additional value in the future, okay, as opposed to a depreciating asset like a television? Okay. Maybe there's a piece of jewelry that you're looking at that you really enjoy, all right, that you like, that you know is going to appreciate over time, right? You can utilize your credit for certain purchases that might appreciate over time, okay, to bring in additional value in the future over and above what you paid for it. Do I need to buy it today? Okay, do I need to buy this item today, or can I wait? Right? And I think in this day and age, you know, I've got 3 kids of my own, and I look back at how I grew up. And, you know, first of all, when I grew up, there was no internet, right? If I wanted to buy something, I had to go to a store, right? Or I had to wait for, you know, I hate to say this because now it's going to really make me old, but I had to wait for like the Sears catalog to come to the house, right? So I could look through it and then tear out the middle order form and then mail it in. So there was no instant gratification. So you had to give more thought to what you purchased and when you purchased it. Nowadays, especially with Amazon and Prime Day, you know, an Amazon Prime free same day delivery, or Amazon Now, Prime Now, where literally you can go on and for thousands and thousands of items, you can have it delivered within the next 2 hours. Okay, so your ability to binge buy, to splurge buy, is significantly higher than it ever has been in years past. Right? If you do make the purchase, what are you giving up on the other side? Opportunity cost. Because as we've talked about, remember, every financial decision that you make has an opportunity cost. Every dollar that you spend could be used for something else. Okay, so what are those opportunity costs for the money that you're considering spending on that item that you're wanting to purchase right now? And then the last bullet is an interesting one. It says, what are the dollar and psychological costs of using credit for this purchase? Okay. Only because I can see her on the screen right now. If Angelica wants to go out, all right, and buy, okay, a Burberry purse, all right, which is crazy expensive, but really chic, okay, and she puts that on her credit card, all right, she might get some points for doing that, but you know what? If that's outside of her budget, she's not going to sleep really well at night. All right. So the psychological aspect, the psychological cost of extending beyond your limits is very, very, very real. Okay. It feels good in the moment when you buy that Burberry purse. Okay. And it feels really nice when you wear it out for the first time. But then 15, 20 days later, when you get your credit card bill and it shows a $2,500 charge for the Burberry purse, okay, you're going to lose some sleep at night. Okay. So being able to manage your spending, managing your use of credit does have a psychological cost. Being able to sleep at night. Okay. Yes, Angelica, go ahead.
So how do you, like, once you get a credit card and everything, how do you then get the company that issued it to you to extend your credit? So if you have like $500, that's your line of credit. How do you get that same company, like, let's say, up your credit, because you know that you might need to make a big purchase in the future, or that you just want to up it so you can build your credit?
Sure. Okay. It's a phone call, right? So in many cases, 2 things are going to happen. One, the credit issuing company is going to automatically raise your line of credit if you have established a consistent ability to pay. Okay, so in your example, you have a $500 line of credit, right? And every month you are spending 500 bucks, and every month you are paying off the 500 bucks. So you're not carrying a balance every month. Okay, so you're utilizing the credit and you're being responsible by paying your bills. Okay, when you do that consistently, okay, it could take maybe 6 months if you're just starting your credit history with that particular company. But you may wake up one morning and log into your account and you'll see that they've automatically raised your limit from 500 to 3,000. Okay, so one of the ways is you just consistently pay your bills. Okay, you just be responsible, you utilize your credit, you pay off your credit card. You utilize your credit, you pay off your credit card. And then the credit card agency recognizes that, and they will automatically sometimes just increase your credit line. Alternatively, you can make a phone call, right? If you know that you are looking at making a larger purchase 3-6 months down the road, and you've been consistent with making your payments, right? And you're paying more than just the minimum balance, right? You can make a phone call to your credit card company, right? Visa, MasterCard, Citi, American Express, and you can ask them for a higher credit limit. Okay, and more times than not, they will go ahead and increase that limit for you. Okay, so either will happen, automatically, or you can ask for it. And also, this is what I hope to impart on you throughout the course of this semester. Never be afraid to ask the question. You can also call them and ask for a lower interest rate. Okay? If you have an established credit history with the company, all right, and they're charging you whatever, call it 18.99%, you can call them and ask them for a lower rate, right? And if you've consistently paid your bills and you've established a good credit history with them, and your credit score that we're going to talk about later is solid, right? They will lower your interest rate on your credit card. But you have to ask, because why on earth would a company that issues credit cards, who makes their money on earning interest on the people who carry balances, why would they just automatically lower your interest rate, taking money out of their own pocket for no reason? Okay, so you can make the phone call if you are proactive. And I would say every time I've made one of those phone calls in all of my years since I first got my very first credit card in 1993 at Georgia Tech, every time I've ever made a phone call that dealt with asking for a higher credit limit or a lower interest rate, I've never been denied that request. Okay, so if you make the phone call, you're very likely to get it. Okay, so hopefully that helps, and we're going to continue that conversation throughout tonight. Okay, so consumer credit, right? It is a major driving force in the United States economy. You know, if we did not have a credit system and we forced everybody to pay cash for their homes, we would not have a housing market. Okay? And if we didn't have a housing market, guess what? From a finance perspective, we wouldn't have things like mortgage-backed securities, credit default swaps, collateralized debt obligations. An enormous part of the entire financial system that exists not only in the United States, but globally, wouldn't exist, period. So consumer credit has an enormous place in the domestic and global economies. And when we think about some of the advantages of credit, some are pretty obvious. We get immediate access to what we want when we want it. Okay? Like, I went out today and I made a purchase. I'm not going to tell you what the purchase was, but I made a really nice purchase that I've been looking at for a long time. Okay? And I slapped it on my American Express card. Now I pay my Amex card off every month. Okay? But It allowed me to not have to take cash out of my liquid accounts. It allowed me to defer payment on the purchase that I made for 30 days. And I obtained rewards in the process from American Express. Okay. So we get immediate access to goods and services through the swipe of that piece of plastic or metal card if you're lucky enough to have one. Right? Speaking of metal cards, anybody ever heard of the American Express Centurion card? Yeah, I know. Like, so I've had an American Express Platinum card for I don't even know, like 15 years, all right? But like in talking about like the stupid things we do with our money, like stupid things that we would think about splurging on, if I ever got a really nice, beautiful box from American Express on my front doorstep that asked me or invited me to join the Centurion card, it's this like mythical, magical, mystical card that very few people have, right? That is pure titanium and all black and it's sexy as hell. But the cost per year is like $4,500 a year just for the card, right? Just to have the card, it's $4,500 of an annual fee, right? But if I ever got it, everything that I'm teaching you tonight, I would throw out the door just to be able to have it for 1 year. Like that's like that's like my unicorn purchase. Okay. So we all have one of those. All right. And that would be mine. All right. The Centurion card, right? I love my Platinum card. It's great. It gives me lots of perks. And we'll talk a little bit more about what perks come along with certain credit cards. But, you know, if I ever saw that beautiful box wrapped in some gold bow sitting on my front stoop, everything that I taught you would just get blown out the window. But don't tell your parents about that. And certainly don't tell Loyola that I just told you that. All right. So the advantages of credit, it allows us to pay for things now in order to use our money in the future to return payment on the things that we bought. Right. It gives us a cushion for financial emergencies. All right. If you have not built up your emergency fund to where it should be at 3 months worth of your expenses, which is going to take time, all right? But it's an important thing to do. You need to do that, right? But if you haven't, all right, and you blow 2 tires on your car, okay, you've got a backstop. You've got a security blanket in the form of your consumer credit, in the form of your credit card. You can still get your tires fixed, put new tires on your car, that will then allow you to get to your job to continue making money. Okay, so the advantages of credit is that it provides a cushion for our financial emergencies that might come up. All right, and that it's going to happen. It really does. It will happen multiple times a year in your financial life. All right, depending upon what credit cards you've got, you might get certain perks like advance notices of sales at Nordstrom's. All right, or at Burberry, okay, or some of the other clothing companies, or for advance notices of ticket sales for certain concerts that might be coming into town, depending upon the card that you've got. Okay, so you do get some perks that come along with having an established credit history with some of these issuing agencies. Okay. It's easier to return merchandise sometimes with a credit card because it's a purely electronic transaction. Okay. If you paid cash for a $2,000 piece of furniture and you tried to go return that piece of furniture, quite frankly, it's highly unlikely that Gardner Furniture is going to have $2,000 of cash sitting in a cash register at one of their locations, right? They're probably going to have to mail you a check for the $2,000. Whereas if you had paid for that piece of furniture with your credit card, they can very easily, in a matter of seconds, refund your credit card for exactly what you purchased. So there's an ease as it relates to transactions when we utilize our credit in a positive, advantageous way, right? And lastly, the final bullet, it's just more convenient, okay? I carry cash pretty much with me every day, all right? And I I joke with my youngest son, who's 10, right? And he just has this personality where I was talking with my wife the other night, and I'm like, he's going to be the kid that I get a phone call from when he's like 24 years old and he's just graduated college and he decided to take a trip to Greece. And he's going to be calling saying that he needs me to mail him or like wire him bail money because he just got arrested in Greece. All right. He just has the personality. Not that he would do something mischievous. He would just be having such a great time that he'd wind up doing something stupid. Right. So having cash with you is a good thing. But when we're just doing our normal day-to-day stuff, we're going to be utilizing our credit. All right. Your Apple Pay. All right. How many of you guys use Apple Pay? Anybody use Apple Pay on your iPhones? You know what? Let me try this. Here we go. I'm going to do this real quick. I am going to try something, and I've never done this before, so bear with me. All right. And I actually don't even know if I can do it in the middle of a, it doesn't look like I can. I was going to create a poll, all right, but I'll try to do that on the fly next time. But if you use Apple Pay, hit me in the chat room. I can keep track of this stuff in my head. All right, if you use Apple Pay or some sort of electronic payment method when you're shopping, put it in the chat room, and I'll keep track of it. Because if you're not using Apple Pay, you ought to be using Apple Pay because it's one of the most secure methods for transacting. All right, Andrew, I use Apple Pay. Good job. All right. Speaking of Apple, anybody watch the Apple event today at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where they released all of their new iPhones? All right, Angelica, awesome, good. Okay. If you haven't watched it, go to apple.com and just watch it tonight. I think it lasted for, I don't know, an hour, to an hour and a half, but it's really good. Okay. And whether you like Apple or you hate Apple, these types of presentations that companies give are very, very, very applicable to things like credit. Because when you think about Apple's business, 10 years ago, right, when you guys were barely even teenagers probably, right? What was Apple's business? What was the primary product that Apple sold? Computers. Yes. Macs, iMacs, laptops, right? And then what magical thing happened in 2007? Okay, with the classic Steve Jobs statement, just one more thing. Okay, iPod. Yep, iPod was the precursor, right? iPod was the precursor, right? The iPhone. Thank you, Andrew. The iPhone happened in 2007. And all of a sudden, now at your fingertips, right? You had this device, okay, that connected you to the internet, that connected you to all of the goods and services that you could then now access remotely, okay, mobile, right? And then once the iPhone was released, okay, what was the one app that kind of came out within the iPhone platform ecosystem that started generating a significant amount of revenue for Apple, completely electronically, totally not hardware based, but more software based? YouTube. Yep, Liam, that's another one, big one. Okay, that's more Google, but along the same lines. Facebook, along the same lines, right? Because Apple had those things plugged in, right? Those apps, YouTube, Facebook, connecting people, more advertising revenue, but also electronic convenience, right? But the App Store, okay? The business services side of Apple right now is the fastest growing part of Apple of any other product line within their entire company. Okay, so when we think about advantages of credit and how that not only allows us as consumers to gain access to the things that we want when we want them, it also benefits the providers of those services. Okay, Apple being pretty much one of the largest one of the providers of those services, right? We play games on our iPhone. We use Facebook. We look at YouTube. And every time we do that, right, it sends money to Apple, right, without us even knowing it, right? So it's convenient. We use it. And it is an enormous driver within the economy, okay? Right. When we put our monthly bills on our credit card, it simplifies our life. I literally, as much as I can, I would probably say 95 to 98% of all of my monthly expenses get put on my Amex card. My utility bill, Verizon, AT&T cell phone bill, right? All of my, app store purchases that I use because I spend too much money playing Clash of Clans. Okay, it all gets billed to my Amex card, so I'm not having to deal with making sure that I go online for the 5 different service providers and pay them every month. It consolidates all of the bills, so that's a huge advantage. You just have to submit one electronic payment to your credit card company, and it pays for all the bills that you incurred over the course of the month. And it's wise use of your cash. You held on to your cash for 30 more days, you utilized your credit efficiently, and you paid your bill on time. Okay? It's efficient. Right? It's safer than cash. Right? You don't know if you pay for something with cash and you have a problem with that product, you have no idea whether or not that product is ever going to be able to be replaced or repaired. You want to trust people, but you never really know. So using an electronic form of payment like a credit card, right, is safer than cash. Because if you do have a problem with it, and you do have a problem with the provider, you can call the credit card company, file a claim. They will remove that charge from your credit card while they do the work to investigate what happened, and then they will get back with you about what the resolution was. So it's safer than using cash. Okay? When we travel, all right, guess what? You can't call Marriott and say, I'd like to reserve a room in Cayman Brac for a scuba diving trip that I'd like to go on, but I'd like to reserve the room with cash. Not going to happen, right? You got to reserve the room with a credit card. Same thing with rental cars, or if you're shopping by phone, right? Most companies will not allow you to secure the product you're looking to purchase or reserve using cash. So you need some form of credit, right? We've already talked about this 4th bullet here about taking advantage of the float time. What's float time? It means that you're floating your own income. You're floating your savings. You make a purchase on day 1 of the month on your credit card. 2 options that you've got. You either pay for it in cash, which is money right out of your account right away, or you pay for it on credit and you give yourself an extra 30 days to pay for that same product, but 30 days later. So you keep your cash, you're earning money on your cash, and then you pay for your bill 30 days later. So you're floating it, right? And then depending upon what type of credit card you might have, there are certain perks that could come along with it, such as rebates, extended warranties, all right? When I go scuba diving, I use an insurance company called DAN, Divers Alert Network, all right? And it gets billed to my credit card, right? But it gives me some significant medical coverages in the event that I have an issue when I'm diving. Okay. And there's other perks, and we'll see it when we go to NerdWallet. There's a credit card for everybody. There's a credit card for whatever your pleasures are. There's a credit card that will fit those needs, right? And then finally, and most importantly, all right, it's an indication of your financial stability. If you can consistently utilize your credit and you can responsibly pay your monthly bills with those credit issuing companies, right? That is a very clear indication to the credit rating agencies, okay, that you're a responsible individual. And the more responsible you are, the less risk you pose. And the less risk you pose, the lower interest rate that you're going to pay on those larger items that you're going to want to purchase in the future, like a car, like a home, like a second residence, vacation home. Okay. And by maintaining that discipline, you're saving yourself tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of dollars of unnecessary interest that you'd otherwise be paying. Okay. Another tangent, I apologize. Anybody have any friends of yours that are taking this other class in, well, the same class, but in the other section? Hit the chat room. Right? So what are some of the disadvantages of credit? Well, there's a pretty obvious one, right? It's a pretty obvious one. Right? And that's the first bullet here, right? The temptation to overspend. If you've got a $5,000 credit line, okay, with Visa, right? And you want to go buy that $2,500 Burberry purse, okay? Or you want to go buy that 85-inch television, right? You have the ability to do that. Okay, you've got the ability to do that, but there is the temptation to overspend when you have an available line of credit. So discipline and responsibility are exceptionally important in the conversation around consumer credit. Okay, if you overextend yourself and you can't make your payments, right? You have a failure to repay your loan, right? You've got loss of income because they can file a claim against your wages, right, for the debt that you owe them, which puts you into an even deeper hole at that time, okay? They can come and they can take part of your property if they so chose. They can put a lien on your house, right? And the comment here about your good reputation, right, that is as it relates to the credit rating agencies. When you lose your reputation with the credit rating agencies, anyone who is looking to issue you a line of credit is not going to see you in a favorable light, right? Your misuse of credit can stick with you for a very, very, very long period of time, 7 to 10 years, right? If you file for bankruptcy or you default on a loan, that decision, that result, okay, of improper financial management can stick with you for 7 to 10 years. Even if you recoup everything that you lost within 2 years after it happened, the impact of that event can last up to a decade on your credit score. Okay? And credit costs money because you get charged interest when you put money onto your credit card and you carry a balance. If you pay your credit card off every month, you don't have to worry about it, right? You don't get charged any interest, right? They give you 30 days to pay your bills. You put $1,500 on your credit card over the course of a month, and the bill comes due and you cut a check or you electronically remit payment to the credit card company for $1,500, then it's $1,500. There's no credit charges. But if it goes 30 days plus one, you owe them interest. Okay. And then that's how they make their money. So credit does cost you money if you don't pay your bills on time. So the different types of credit. Right? So we've talked about consumer credit. We've talked about credit in general, what it is, advantages, disadvantages. But let's talk about the two different types of credit that exist. Right? We've got closed-end credit. Right? Closed-end credit is a single loan for a specific purpose. Right? And again, I keep coming back to the whole furniture example. And the furniture example is a great example of closed-end credit. You open up a line of credit. okay, to purchase a new furniture set for your new apartment that you're going to have after you get this great job coming out of Loyola, right? And it's for a specific purpose, right? The specific purpose is the furniture, right? So you agree to purchase $5,000 worth of furniture on credit from Wolf Furniture, and they agree to offer you credit terms in the form of 0% interest for 18 months. And as long as you pay that off over 18 months, you incur no interest charges, you pay off the loan, and the debt is settled, right? It's closed. The loan is closed. It's for a specific purpose, right? Mortgages, automobiles, furniture, all great examples of closed-end credit, because at some point the loan ends. At some point, the money that you borrowed for a specific purpose gets repaid and the ending balance is a bagel, zero. Okay, so closed-end credit is for a specific purpose for a finite period of time. Right? Open-ended credit, meaning you are issued a line of credit that you may use for whatever you wish to use for whatever period of time you would like to use it, okay? And that's the available credit that you have open to you. So this is like the classic example of your credit card, your Visa, your MasterCard, your Amex, okay? Sometimes you'll have overdraft protection with open-ended credit cards, where it gets tied to a particular checking account. And if you overdraw from your credit limit, it'll automatically pull from your checking account or some other liquid account that you've linked up to that open-end line of credit. But the point is that you use as it's needed until you reach the line of credit maximum, okay? So if you're issued a line of credit of $1,000, as long as you spend less than $1,000 or you pay off your bill, and you never go over that $1,000 limit, you can utilize that $1,000 limit as much as you see fit. You can buy something for $1,000, pay it off, and then go right back to buy something for $1,000 more and pay it off. And you can do that back and forth as many times as you want. Okay, but the point is that it's open-ended. You can use it for whatever you'd like. Sometimes it's referred to as a revolver, okay? Okay, it's a revolving check, all right? But in the finance world, we call it a revolver, right? So when we think about credit cards as it relates to the United States and the people who have credit, about 70% of the people in the United States carry one or more credit cards, right? Now, I know some of you are going to have a question, and that question is probably going to be, okay, Professor A, how many credit cards do you carry? B, is it okay to carry more than 10 credit cards? C, how many credit cards should I reasonably have? Right? And there is a tremendous amount of trains of thought on those questions. Right? And here's what I will tell you, and this is my personal opinion. This is how I've managed my finances. This is how I've managed my personal life as it relates to credit cards. I have had one primary credit card for my entire credit history, right? And that has been my American Express card that I got in 1993. I currently have a business debit card. I have a business American Express card, right? And I have a Bank of America and a business debit card. And that's it. So if we talk about credit cards, it's really only 3, right? Some may think that that's too little, that I'm not maximizing my ability to get rewards and points. But for me personally, I find that I'm able to keep track of my finances more efficiently when I have a fewer number of cards. And if you find the right card that fits your needs and your desires, there's no need for you to have 15 or 20 different cards, right? So of that 70% of the folks in the United States that have more than one credit card, okay, about half of all of the credit card users, okay, are convenience users. So that means that about half the people who have credit cards in this country pay their balances off in full every month, right? they're disciplined about it. Right? The other 50% carry a balance and they pay the issuing company interest every month, right? Finance charges, late payments, whatever the charges may be. And that is a significant source of income for the credit issuing companies themselves. Okay? We have things like co-branding, right? Where we link a credit card to some sort of trade name that offers points or rebates on products and services. Right? What's a good example of this? Well, let's think about American Express. Well, you've got the American Express Delta Airlines credit card, right? The issuing company is American Express, but they've co-branded the card with Delta Airlines so that when the consumers charge on the Amex Delta Airlines card, the consumer receives Delta Airline miles as rewards for the purchases that they've made. Okay, so co-branding is a huge market within the credit card industry. Okay, we just talked about Apple Pay. All right, if you're not using Apple Pay, you need to be using Apple Pay. It is one of the most secure methods for electronic payments that exists in the consumer credit marketplace today. Period, plain and simple. I don't care if you like Apple, but take my word for it. It is single-handedly the most secure form of payment out there. All right. And if you want to know why, you can hit me up in the chat room, or you can hit me up in email or send or text me, call me, whatever you'd like if you want to talk about that. Just take my word for it. So we've got smartphones, which take the place of a lot of physical cards. Home equity loans, right? This is a big one for people who have mortgages on their house. So when we talk about home equity lines of credit, it's a source of cash, right? If your house, the market value of your home, okay, is $500,000, all right, and 85% or 80%, typically it's more 80%, I need to change that to 80%, not 85%. So if your 80% of $500,000 is $400,000, okay, and your mortgage on the house is $200,000, then the bank will typically issue a line of credit for the difference between that 80% loan to value and what your principal is on your mortgage. So you can get a line of credit for $200,000 if you so chose to go out and get access to a home equity line of credit. Okay. If you choose to use that line of credit for improvements to your home, the interest that you pay on that line of credit is tax deductible. Okay. And it is essentially no different, right, than a revolver, okay, or a credit card that's issuing you a line of credit. Okay. You have the ability to utilize that $200,000 as long as typically, as long as you're making improvements to your home, okay, you're able to use that on a revolving basis. You want to redo your bathroom for $15,000, you take it out of your line of credit, you use your line of credit to pay your contractor, and then over a period of time after that, you repay the $15,000 that you borrowed against the equity in your home to put in the new bathroom. So it's set up just like a revolver. Okay. So this is also really important. All right, so security. And how many of you guys use a VPN, a virtual private network, when you access the internet? Anybody know what a VPN? All right, Nolan, what VPN do you use, Nolan? Andrew, which one? Okay, so homework assignment, not NordVPN. Yep, that's what I use, Liam. I use NordVPN, right? So homework assignment, not graded, but you need to investigate starting to use a VPN when you are on an unsecure network. So if you're at Starbucks and you're on their Wi-Fi, you are not secure, all right? Everyone around you, including the ISP, Tunnel Bear, that's a good one, including the ISP that's providing the internet service, they are tracking everything that you're doing, okay? And the VPN, all right, and I am not an expert by any means on the technology behind all of this, but at the 50,000 foot level, when you use a VPN, okay, you essentially go dark in the eyes of the system that you're on. So they can't see you, they can't track you, okay, but you still have access to the internet, right? So there's no ability for anybody on the other side of your internet connection to gain access to whatever it is that you might be doing, right? So one of the questions is going to be, well, why do I need that? Anybody ever seen the BBC television show Bodyguard, The Bodyguard? It's freaking awesome, by the way. All right, but when it first came out, it was only offered through the BBC in the UK, right? So with a VPN, okay, you can plug into a server in the United Kingdom, and the internet provider in the United Kingdom thinks that you're on a UK server in the UK, and you can get access to UK specific broadcasting, right? So that's a practical example of a VPN. Same with soccer games, all right? I love watching international soccer games, but I can't always get access to them here in the United States. So I can plug into a server through my VPN, NordVPN, okay, in Spain or in Italy or in France. And more times than not, I can actually then get live streaming for soccer games that are within those countries, okay? So it allows you to tunnel, okay, to different servers in order to create a very secure and very private, okay, browsing experience. Okay, so you've got NordVPN. Nolan, he was in the NSA, some crazy stuff. Yeah, I imagine you guys probably have a pretty awesome VPN. All right, maybe he can come over here and show me some of that secret spy stuff. But nonetheless, security is incredibly important when you're making purchases online. All right, and making purchases via a virtual private network, VPN, simply adds a whole nother layer of security and privacy to your online transactions. Okay, I'm not sure that I need to tell you guys what's all listed here, all right, but the bottom line here is if you read anything, this fifth bullet point, keep your personal information to yourself, okay, unless you can verify who's asking for it. In the last 5 days, I've probably gotten 3 phone calls a day, automated phone calls from Bank of America, asking me to validate certain pieces of information about myself. And I refuse to do it. If they want my personal information, somebody, a physical person, is going to have to call me and then verify their identity to me before I give them any information from a personal standpoint about myself. So be very, very careful about those automated calls that you get, even if it comes from your bank or your credit card company, okay? Again, I think I told you already that a few weeks ago, my PayPal account got hacked and it created 2.5 weeks worth of drama for me to get, file the fraud claim, get money back, shut down accounts, open up new accounts, and then all the automatic, transactions that I had set up, I had to get reset up. So be very careful as to who you give your private information to. Okay. So when we measure our credit capacity, all right, our third learning objective tonight, okay, how do we assess it? Okay, and how do we build our credit rating so we can get more credit, right? So one of the first questions that we have to ask ourselves is, can we afford the loan? Okay, can we still take care of all of our essential needs on a day-to-day basis in our operating life? Okay, and then still on top of all of that, afford the loan that we're thinking about taking out. Okay, and then the question becomes opportunity cost. What am I willing to give up to take on this monthly loan. Okay. If you want to have a BMW M3, which is a phenomenal vehicle, but also very expensive, that comes with a very expensive price tag. Okay. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. There's nothing wrong with having it. The question becomes, what are you willing to give up in order to get that? Okay. So can we afford it? And what are we planning to give up in order to achieve that desire that we have? And one of the metrics that we need to look at in evaluating that opportunity cost is what we call our debt payments to income ratio, right? And we're not talking about including house payments here. We're talking about other debt payments, right? So we take our monthly debt obligations, okay, and we divide that by our net monthly income. So we have our gross income, right? We have all of our deductions. So 401k contributions, HSA contributions, taxes that come out, and we get to our kind of net income for the month, right? That's what gets deposited into our checking account, right? And then we look at all of the debt payments that we have that don't involve a home mortgage. So credit card payments, student loan interest, anything that we are using, any debt that we have that is on credit, okay? That closed-end credit with the furniture company, that monthly payment is considered a debt payment. So we take all of those debt payment related items, okay, and we divide it by our net monthly income. And from a heuristic standpoint, a general rule of thumb is that we don't want that debt payment ratio to exceed 20%. Okay, so we don't want to have debt payments, okay, that exceed 20% of our net income, our after tax and after deduction income. Okay, general rule of thumb. So if you remember from the very beginning of tonight, the debt payments to income ratio is part of the midterm. Okay, so Albert AWOL is going to have a cash flow statement, income statement, that's going to have some monthly debt payments involved in it. Okay, and you're going to have calculated as net income, and you're going to need to look at what his debt payment ratio is. Okay, so in this example, all right, we've got a monthly net income of $2,136. All right, we've got credit card payments of $426, and which includes an auto loan and credit card payments. Then if we take the 426 and we divide it by the 2136, our debt payments ratio is 19.94%. So we're pushing the limit, right? 20% was kind of our upper threshold of where we wanted to see ourselves. So we're pushing that upper bounds of where we want to be, right? So debt payments to income, the sum of all the debt payments that we have excluding mortgage divided by our net income, not gross, but net, after deductions and after taxes. And again, if you're going to make a mistake on this on the midterm, the mistake is going to come in one of two ways. Either you're going to include something that's not a debt payment, or you're going to divide it by your gross income, not your net income. Okay? If you're going to make a mistake, it's in one of those two places. So when we go back through the midterm and you look at those line items that are just kind of thrown at you, and then when you're building your income statement, maybe go ahead and just make a flag next to the items that you know are debt payments. Put a DP next to it if you need to just isolate what are considered debt payments. Things that are on credit, student loans, okay? That is a debt payment. Student loans, credit card bills, auto loans, all debt payments. Okay. When we talk about debt to equity ratio, right, we're talking about liquidity, right? So when we take the total amount of things that we owe, all right, so we're from a balance sheet standpoint, we're talking about our total liabilities, okay? So when we take the total amount, the dollar value of the things that we owe, and we divide that by our net worth, okay, we get the debt to equity ratio, all right? And if that ratio is less than 1, okay, It means that we have enough equity in our life to pretty much take care of all of our liabilities, right? If it's greater than one, we are in a situation where we could become insolvent, AKA possibly filing for bankruptcy, if our liabilities are exceeding our net worth, okay? So we'll push through these next couple of slides fairly quickly, but they're fairly, I mean, they're important, but you may not find yourself in this situation, all right? There may come a time early on, right when you graduate from school, where you might need to have a cosigner for a loan, a parent or a grandparent. Based upon your credit history, you may not have had enough of an established credit history for the issuing agency to issue you a line of credit. In which case they would say, hey, we're willing to do this, but you need to have a cosigner on the loan, okay? Which means that you're being asked to guarantee the debt. If you are a cosigner, you are guaranteeing the debt that's being taken out, right? So if you're looking at going to purchase a car after you graduate, right, and Honda American Finance says, you know, we're willing to give you the loan for this vehicle, but you need to have a cosigner with good credit in order to get the loan, right? You're still responsible for the loan. You're still responsible for making the monthly payments. But if for some reason that your payment is missed or you start to default on that loan, the cosigner, by definition, assumes responsibility for the loan. So they then absorb the obligation, take on the obligation to repay that loan, right? So you might find yourself in a situation where that happens, okay? Hopefully after this class, if you don't have a credit card, you're going to get a credit card, one that fits the needs and wants that you've got. Okay, like the Discover It card, which is a great student credit card. It's probably the best one that you guys could possibly get between that one or the Apple card directly linked to your iPhone. Okay, both of which are fantastic because they help you manage your finances more than any other card that's out there. Okay, but in the event you find yourself in a situation where you're asked to have a cosigner, you need to understand what that means. It means that if you default on your responsibility, the person who signs on the line underneath you is then responsible and obligated to take over that loan. Okay. And this last bullet is interesting because they've actually done a number of studies where the loans that have been issued where a cosigner has been asked for, right? Approximately 75% of those loans that required a cosigner actually resulted in that cosigner having to either fully or in part repay that loan. Okay, so establishing a good credit history is extremely important because you don't want to find yourself in a spot where you've got to cosign for a loan or you have to have somebody cosign with you on the loan. Okay, and not only that, but let's look at it from the other side. All right, let's look at it from the standpoint of maybe you have a friend or a sibling that is looking to take out a loan, and they ask you, "Would you be willing to co-sign this loan for me?" All right, and they feed you, you know, a line of BS that, oh, don't worry about it. Like everything's fine. Like I've got this great job and I'll be able to pay the bills. And you're like, oh, everything sounds great. And you say, because I'm such a good friend and I really I can't say no. And I don't want to make you feel bad. And I don't want to lose you as a friend. I'll go ahead and co-sign for the loan. You just put yourself into the 75% of the population that's going to wind up having to pay for that loan. Okay. So another nugget from this class, separate business from friendship. There's nothing wrong with doing business with friends, okay? Because sometimes it's going to happen, but you got to separate friendship from business. And I just had to, I just had to deal with that this past weekend in soccer, if you can believe that, of all things. I had a friend of mine who I've known for 4 years, and his son had never played soccer before. And I coach a club soccer team. And I told him, I said, look, I said, I'm happy to have your son come and play with me. Be great. All right. We'll train him. We'll work with him. He'll get to play at a higher level than he would ever play at if he just joined a recreational soccer team. I said, but you got to understand, like, this is a club team. And we've got kids who are 11 years old, my son, and they've been playing since they were 2, you know. And we had a tournament this past weekend, and he, after the tournament, because his son didn't play a lot of minutes during the game because the competition was extremely tough and we needed to put our best players on the field. And so he got up my rear end so much to the point where I don't know that he and I are going to be friends anymore. Okay. So friendship and business, it's going to happen in your life. Okay. And you've got to be willing to accept it. And when we're talking about co-signing a loan, you may find yourself in a situation where you've got your best friend who's begging and pleading with you to put your name on that line underneath theirs. And you need to just really ask yourself the question whether or not you're willing to do that or not. All right. So just be careful. Okay. All right. Credit rating. Here we go. What does all this mean? Right. So building and maintaining your credit rating, right? Your credit rating in this day and age is probably your single most valuable asset that you have aside from your own integrity. Okay. Because your credit rating can mean the difference between, a 3.5% mortgage and a 6.5% mortgage on a 30-year loan. And that's the difference in $50,000 to $60,000 of unnecessary interest. So aside from your integrity, your credit rating is probably the second most important thing that you need to pay attention to. Okay. When we talk about your credit rating and your credit score, all right, there are credit bureaus that monitor your credit rating. Okay. Equifax, TransUnion, okay, Experian, all monitor your credit. There's 3 companies. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB, all right, is what is responsible for handling the complaints that come in from consumers that relate to companies that have denied them credit. Okay. So who is responsible for providing all of this data to the credit bureaus that then turn all that information into a score that's representative of the risk that you represent to the company looking to issue you credit? Okay. Well, guess what? It comes from a lot of places. Banks, court records. So for bankruptcy, child support, alimony, finance companies, the merchants. Okay, if you've got a closed-end line of credit with that furniture company or a revolver credit with Nordstrom, okay, they all report to the credit rating agencies. Okay, anyone that you might have a credit-related relationship with reports data as required by law to these credit bureaus, right? So what are some of the things that are in your credit file? When we get to the end of this segment, we're actually going to go log on to mine and I'll show you what it looks like, okay? But think who you work for. What position do you have? How much money do you make? What's the address of your employer and your former employer? Where have you lived? How long have you lived there? What addresses have you had within the last 3, 5, and 7 years? And why do you think they would ask questions about the number of places that you've lived in the last 3, 5, or 7 years? What do you think that relates to? Any idea? Stability. Okay. It's a data point for these companies, right? If you've moved 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different times, or you've changed jobs 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different times in the last 5 years, okay? It is a flag to the credit rating companies, the bureaus, that there could be some instability in your ability to generate income. Okay? Could just be it was a natural part of your job, but nonetheless, it's a flag for these bureaus that relates to the stability of your position. Okay, if you're married, what your Social Security number is. Okay, do you rent? Do you own your home? Okay, we have something called the Fair Credit Reporting Act. All right, where, and I want to get to one other slide here in about, I'm just looking through here real quick. 1 second. Okay, so the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Okay? This is used to regulate how credit reports are used in either accepting or declining your request for credit. Right? It mandates that certain information be deleted after certain periods of time, making them obsolete. So if you made a mistake in your credit, you know, if you're 20 years down the road, if you made a mistake now in your credit, that mistake that you made today is not going to show up on your credit score in your credit report 20 years from now. Okay, so the Fair Credit Reporting Act gives you a chance, okay, to make up for the mistakes that you made. Okay, and another important thing here is that only the authorized people have access to your credit report, which is basically you and the credit reporting agencies. Okay, no one can necessarily call in and get all of the details around your credit report. When you get those credit card offers in the mail, you know, that we all get 0% interest for 18 months, they haven't actually accessed your credit report from a like full disclosure standpoint. They've done what's called a soft check, where they will verify that you're employed, what your income level is, and that you don't have any negative reports on your credit report. Okay, but they're not getting access to your Social Security number or any of the details around what is completely within your credit report. Only you have access to all that information. Right? So who can obtain a credit report? Only properly identified people, right? If you go get a new job and they say, hey, we're going to do a credit check on you, and you have to allow them to do it, you're signing off that you're giving them access to gain access to your credit report, right? Sometimes there's a court order that deals with getting access to your credit report to see how much debt you have, right? Hopefully none of you will find yourself in that situation, right? But then if you're trying to get security clearance, okay, like Nolan's dad was in the NSA, all right, or maybe he still is in the NSA, I'm not sure. But nonetheless, I guarantee you, I 100% guarantee you that when Nolan's dad went to apply for a job at the NSA, that they did a credit report check, right? Because the NSA, national security, right? If somebody is in an unstable situation, especially financially, they could potentially be more subject to being bribed to steal national secrets, right? So companies want to know that if you have a solid credit score, generally speaking, like you're a pretty nice guy, a pretty nice gal, right? So time limits on adverse data. The big thing here is that bankruptcy is about a 10-year, okay, about a 10-year, line item within your credit score, within your credit file. All right, so if you file for bankruptcy, it's gonna stick there for 10 years. Unpaid liens, sometimes up to 15 years, right? But after that 7, 10, 15-year time frame, The credit reporting agencies, those 3 agencies we talked about, cannot disclose that information unless you're being investigated. Okay, there are certain cases that they can disclose things that extend beyond that 7-year time horizon. Right? Again, I'm not going to test you on any of this. This is just for your information, which is why we're kind of blowing through it. All right, mistakes happen. Okay, mistakes happen in your credit file. All right, nothing's perfect. This is why it's important to check your credit file from time to time to see what's in there, right? And if there is a mistake, you can contact the credit bureau and you can have it fixed, period, plain and simple, right? So when we talk about applying for credit, what are creditors looking for? What are the companies that are going to entrust you with a line of credit looking for? Well, we're talking about the 5 C's, right? Character, right? Do you pay your bills on time? Are you responsible? Capacity. Do you have the ability to repay your loan? Have you been in your job for a lengthy period of time? Do you have a solid income? Are you in a business that's not necessarily influenced by seasonality? And what I mean by that is, if you're a construction worker working in North Dakota, odds are you don't have a lot of work in the middle of winter. Okay, so you have a seasonal, cyclical revenue stream, okay, that impacts your capacity during certain times of the year. Capital. What are your assets and net worth? Balance sheet, people, okay, plays a big role in the 5 C's and your ability to access capital at a lower interest rate. Collateral. What do you own? What do you possibly have that could be used in the event that you don't repay your bills, you don't pay off that loan? What are your possessions that the creditors can come and take if you default? And then finally, the conditions. What economic conditions can affect your ability to repay your loan, right? That gets into where you live, all right? What type of job you have in terms of, is it a seasonal job? Is it a consistent revenue generator? So the 5 C's: character, capacity, capital, collateral, and the conditions within which you work. Okay. So how do we go about determining your score? What are the biggest factors that determine your credit score, right? Well, it's really 5 things. The largest component to what goes into determining your FICO score is your payment history, right? How long do you have an established credit history with the same institution? Okay, this isn't about getting a new credit card every year. How long do you have, what length of time have you established a payment and credit history with an issuer? 35% in general of your FICO score is tied to your payment history. Do you pay your bills on time? Okay. And have you consistently paid those bills on time with those credit issuers? The next largest is the amount that you owe. How much of your credit are you utilizing? Okay, if you have a $10,000 credit line, okay, and you're utilizing $8,000-9,000 of it, okay, that has a pretty significant impact on your credit score. So your credit utilization, all right, has a big impact on your credit score, right? Followed by fairly even between the length of credit history. So how long have you had credit, whether it's 1 year, 2 years? When was the first time you opened your credit card? So how long ago did you establish credit at the very beginning of time? Okay. How many new credit cards have you opened? All right. This has a big impact. If you've started to open new lines of credit and then you go apply for a mortgage, you're not going to get the best interest rate. Okay, because that dings your credit. Because the credit issuing companies see that as more ability for you to go into debt. Okay, And then finally, 10% essentially of your FICO score revolves around the types of credit that you use. Okay, whether it's closed end, whether it's open end, whether it's a home mortgage, whether it's